Hello, this is Mike at GameFromScratch. Welcome to the increasingly poorly named This Week in Game Development. This is a quick recap of what happened in the last week in the world of game development, but I haven't done one in a couple of weeks, so this is more like this month in game development. So we've got a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. This is the last time I did this, actually the end of October, so we basically got an entire month's worth. Now, all of the stories we're going to cover here are linked at GameFromScratch. You can see the page in front of you. I will link this down below. So without further ado, let's jump in. Like as I said, we've got a lot to cover. This is going to be in chronological order, so this is basically starting with the very beginning of November and working our way towards basically today. And the very first thing that happened was Love 10.2 was released. Now, Love 10.2 is a Lua-powered game engine. Very, very cool. I've actually did a full, complete beginner's tutorial series on it that is linked in the story right here. Again, Lua-powered, 2D, cross-platform, great little game engine. This one brings several fixes, new APIs, etc. A couple of deprecated APIs and several fixes and a couple of other changes. It's actually a pretty big release, but nothing really huge stand out there. One of the nice things that they did, though, is they implemented lovec.exe, an alternative Love runtime that actually creates and opens a console for you on the Windows platform. So if you're doing some debugging and printing statements, you'll have that console available, which is kind of nice. Otherwise, you used to have to run Love from the command line in order to see the results. So now you can run lovec directly from Windows Explorer, and you're good to go. Next up, we had Godot process update and asset library web front end. Now, the renderer progress update isn't really that important because we're going to talk about some news later this month that's going to basically supersede everything that was written here. But what also was cool is the announcement is the web front end for their asset store is now available online. So it is available at godotengine.org/asset-library/asset. But as you can see, it's basically a front-end web browser capable for the asset store. This is sort of like the equivalent of the Unity or the Unreal Engine asset store, a place to get modules, libraries, scripts, that kind of stuff for Unity. And there's for Godot engine. And there's direct integration into the Godot engine. This enables you to actually use the web browser instead, and also enables you to submit things to the asset library. Now, another release is Microsoft and Unity teamed up to announce a $100,000 developer contest, and the $100,000 being the grand prize. So basically, if you have an existing application that's published on Steam Store, Google Play Store, or Apple's App Store, you can now port it to Universal Windows platform using Unity, and if you are chosen as the winner, you get $100,000 in advertising. Now, the advertising source is at Microsoft's discretion. Second prize will get $50,000 in advertising, $25,000 goes to the third prize, and then there will be 10 honorable mentions. Now, it starts November 1st, ends February the 28th, so there's plenty of time available there. Basically, if you've got a Unity-powered application and you're willing to port it to any of those platforms, it does make a lot of sense. You've got to support UWP, but that could be Windows 10 or Xbox 10. You don't have to support all UWP platforms. Next up, Unity Collaborate is now in open beta. Unity Collaborate is a cool little thing. Basically, it is their version of GitHub for small teams to work together using Unity remotely. So it's sort of a source control, archive for assets, and collaboration system, and it's strictly built into Unity. You need to use Unity 5.5 or higher, have a Unity ID, and a decent internet connection, obviously, because there's a lot of data potentially being pushed. The personal version comes with 5 gigs of cloud storage. The Plus version comes with 15 gigs, and the Pro version comes with 25 gigs. The personal edition is limited to up to 5 members per project, while the other tiers are limited up to 15 members. So if you're working remotely with a number of people, you should definitely check out Unity's Collaborate functionality. Next up, we have GameMaker Studio 2 Beta was launched. Now, I haven't actually gotten my hand on this. It's closed beta, so basically they've been launching it in batches. But the initial people have been quite impressed with the release. Now, there's a little bit more GameMaker news coming up in a minute, so we'll get back to that. But basically, GameMaker is in beta for GameMaker 2. Now, another release this week was OpenFL 4.4 and Lime 3.4. Now, OpenFL is Open Flash Library. Basically, it is a hacks library that tries to implement a lot of the common Flash functionality, things like Flash and Stage 3D, etc. And Lime is the underlying technology that it uses, more of a low-level thing such as like SDL for providing the underlying hardware services. They both had an update, nothing really major in either update, but if you're a hacks developer, definitely be sure to check that one out. Where are we at? All right, so Unity released a patch. We won't even get into that. There's so many Unity patches in this time span. Tiled 0.17.1 was released. Now, Tiled is an open source 2D map editor. You can do isometric, you can do orthogonal maps. Very cool tool. I've done a full tutorial series. You can see it, read about right here. Number of new features in here. A lot of it's fixed. Little plugin updates. The Fold plugin was added, and Chinese and French translations were updated. And we'll hear a little bit more about Tiled in a few minutes because they just had a release literally today. Now, SFML also had a release, 2.4.1. SFML is the simple, fast media library. It's a C++ cross-platform framework for creating 2D games or for setting up OpenGL windows. You can pick and choose which parts of the SFML library you want to use. So if you want to use input, you can. Graphics, you can. Networking, you can. But you can use each individual piece on its own if you prefer. This update has switched back to pure XLib instead of XCB plus XLib. Removed the internal OpenGL context is the biggie thing about this release. Stack Overflow from Windows when using multiple threads, and then several bug fixes and changes, etc. Another release this month was Amazon Lumberyard 1.6 beta was released. Again, a lot of this stuff was tied into their Twitch functionality. They added new Twitch MetaStream functionality, which basically allows you to do things like create picture-in-picture displays that work on Twitch in your game. So if you wanted to, basically added programmatic functionality on top of Twitch for your users to consume, the options are in there now. That's the big thing about this release. There's a couple other features, obviously. More to Lumberyard Beta 1.6, including a robust component suite that gives you the ability to easily move features of the engine to build game entities, Linux support for dedicated servers, new Cloud Canvas functionality helps you choose between multiple deployments, and one of the really nice things is they've brought the 8.4 gigabyte reduction in the initial install size, which is great because, frankly, the Lumberyard install is absolutely gigantic. We had a default engine release, 1.2.92. Set text on label is actually handy. This is nice because it gives you a quick, easy way to get text up on screen. So that new API is there. So new Facebook APIs and 2 more project settings. One for the maximum draw calls and another for the maximum text characters. Where were we? All right. So that's the Fold engine. SketchUp 2017 was released. SketchUp is it used to be owned by Google. It's a 3D modeling application. You can see here often used for architectural visualization work, but I know some people have used this for game development, especially for level development. It takes a different approach. It's more of a CSG or construction solid geometry based modeler than the traditional polygonal modeler that we're more used to. But you can get some really fast, quick workflows out of this guy. And this guy has, 2017 release has improved 3D graphical performance, higher quality transparency, high DPI support, which is something I like to see in everything from this day on. Smart offset tool, table ability, so it's like spreadsheet data being brought in, DWG support improvements, extension manager, and more. Cool release, definitely something to keep an eye on, especially if you're a SketchUp user. Unity patch again. They've got 2 series of patches going on right now. You'll see there's the 5.4 series of patches, and they've also got the 5.3. So they're maintaining 2 in sequence. But we'll skip over that one again. Maya Bonus Tools 2017 release. It's a free set of tools that basically improve Maya. A collection of useful Maya scripts and plugins. Let's see. Do I actually get a list of what they were? No, I don't. Yes, they didn't actually break down what the new functionality was, so you basically have to watch this video to see the improvements that are in there. But there is, basically it just adds plus functionality to Maya, and I believe this will also work with Maya LT, the stripped-down indie version of Maya for game developers. Next up, we have the Fold engine announced a contest. This is actually kind of cool. You can win GDC 2017 tickets, all expense tripped, for up to 6 teams of 3 people each, so up to 18 people. You get all expense paid trip to GDC, and you have your game displayed at the conference. So, if you're up and coming, you're making your game in the Fold engine, this is a great opportunity to get a hell of a lot of exposure. This runs until January the 22nd, so you've got some time. Of course, the obvious requirement is you need to use the default game engine. Now, I have done a full tutorial series on the default game engine, so if you want to learn more, definitely check that out. And this one's kind of a release, but Microsoft released Visual Studio for Mac, sorta. Now, the reality is what they did is they rebranded Xamarin Studio as Microsoft Visual Studio for Mac, and we'll stop talking about that now because It's not really that exciting of news. Now, what they did release, and this isn't in my news recap, but Visual Studio 2017 release candidate is out there for, the real version of Visual Studio for Windows. I actually did a video on and detailing the full functionality of it. I do recommend you check that out. Very cool stuff in that release, especially the new installer that's much more streamlined and doesn't bloat your computer nearly as badly. Now, also Unreal Engine 4.14 was released. One of the big things here is a forward shader rendering. So basically this is rendering optimized for VR, or a rendering technique that works best with VR. Automatic LOD generation, streamlined the animation tooler, added many new features to Sequencer, and there is Vulkan support for people that are into that. And you can now use Visual Studio 15, which is now actually called Visual Studio 2017. Next up, we have Godot 2.2 is not going to be released. Now, don't worry, this isn't dire news. Basically, what has happened is the Godot guys have come out and said, the stuff they're working on 3.0 is going to break too many things. It's too important. It's too fundamental for us to go ahead with. So this functionality they were looking at putting into 2.2 is not going to happen yet. So what they're going to do is ship 3.0 and then work on the Godot 2.2 stuff. Now, the Godot 2.2 stuff was things like C# support, visual scripting, that kind of stuff. And 3.0 stuff is the new renderer, which is kind of underlying all of it, plus some low-level architectural stuff that's kind of fundamental. That's why it's a 3.0 release as a 2.x release. So with that one coming, they basically pushed off other releases until that happens. Now, what they've done, though, as part of this announcement, is said that the 3.0 release is going to happen faster. And on top of that, thanks to a Mozilla grant down here, basically, I'm going to screw his name up here, but Juan Linetsky is going to be working full-time on Unity for the next 6 months, on Godot, I gotta stop saying that, on the Godot engine for the next 6 months, which is huge because he's the primary developer anyways, and the guy works really fast. So with him on it full-time, it's interesting to see how far Godot comes along in that 6 month time span. Another thing that happened this week was Unity Shader was released to GitHub, the source code there. It's kind of cool. It used to be a product called HLSL Cross Compiler. Basically what it does is takes HLSL, which is the DirectX shader script, and compiles it to GLSL, GLSL-ES, Vulkan, or Metal support. So you can now work with one shader language and have it deployed to multiple languages. So you could work in HLSL and then compile it out to whatever platforms you need. It's available on GitHub right now. This is used internally in Unity to do their scripting support. Now you can integrate it into your own project should you require. Where were we? All right, we're here. Construct 2 released R240. Construct is a HTML5 powered codeless game engine. I've never really checked it out that detailed. I need to at some point in the future, but it takes an approach somewhat similar to ClickTeam Fusion or Stencil, say, in building your game. Your game behind the scenes is JavaScript and HTML5, but your building process isn't. Big things about this release: basic WebGL 2 support was added. A couple of new triggers. Triggers are basically like events. Load from URL action can now specify cross-origin as anonymous. A bunch of changes, a bunch of bug fixes. Now let's move on. So after that, we have the Corona SDK 2016.2992 was released. It comes with a new Corona simulator, new welcome screen. Attempt to validate keys for your Facebook ID before going. Basically a number of smaller fixes and changes across the entire platform. We've got Godot 2.1.1 was released. Now, I said 2.2 was not coming, but 2.1.1 is a maintenance release, a number of fixes. The funny thing is, Godot's maintenance releases are actually a lot larger than many other game engines' entire releases. We've seen things added such as gamepad support for Mac OS X, generic A-star implementation. A-star is a typical pathfinding solution. This is a generic one you can use in your game for providing, AI navigation ability. Better drag and drop, OpenGL compatibility enhancements, third-party library refactoring can now be shipped in a separate folder and they can be unbundled, etc. So just a nice cross-the-board release going on there. After that, we have the default engine had another game engine release, 1.2.93. A lot of it was new and improved Spine animation support. Spine is an IK-based 2D Bones animation program. I actually checked it out. You can check out the hands-on guide right here. It's a very cool program, actually. So they've got improved support for it in the default engine in that release. GameMaker 2 beta that I mentioned earlier, what they did is they opened the beta up. So it was a closed beta. You had to apply to get on the list. They were releasing X amount at a time. Now, if you pre-order GameMaker Studio 2, you get instant access to said beta. And again, the reviews coming out have been actually really positive. Project Rider EAP is now available to the public. This one's pretty cool. This is JetBrains, the makers of IntelliJ, WebStorm, PHP Storm, Sea Lion, etc. Various great little cross-platform developer tools, mostly IDEs. Project Rider is their evolution of a product called ReSharper. It is a cross-platform development environment for C#, and it is now available for everybody, not just a closed application. And it has direct integration for Unity developers built in, including support for various Unity messages or callbacks, basically, and debugging ability directly for running attached to existing Unity process right out of the IDE box. So if you are a C# developer, this is one thing to check out. Definitely a tool of interest for cross-platform C# developers. It does give you an alternative. All right, sorry for the background noise there. My puppy is obsessed with my doorstop, which I just paused to remove. All right, back to the news. So that is a new cross-platform C# IDE available. I am a big fan of JetBrains tools. I do recommend that you do check that out if you get the chance. Next up, we have Artisy Draft. Artisy Draft is it's kind of a unique tool. Basically, it's for game designers to do things like model the flow of their game, create inventory systems, dialogues, flesh out NPCs. It's basically a back-end process mapper of how your game is going to look. And what they've done is they basically created tools so that you can directly take the results from Artisy Draft and export them into different game engines. One being Unity, which is where Unity integration comes in, and the other one being the macro dev kit, which should have just been called dev kit. So basically, you can use the dev kit to embed Artisy Draft output into your own game. So this gives you the ability to have your inventory of items from your game created using this tool, using nice created forms, etc. Have game flow being done in a flowchart form, have your NPC, all your character dialogue being handled that way. And now you can hook up and integrate it into your game. Now, both are in beta right now, and they're taking applications. Just send an email off to beta@nevergo.com if you want to participate in either beta. They also reduced their price quite a bit, I think by about half. So if you've been looking to get into the Artisy Draft thing but haven't done it yet, now is a good time. The price is a lot lower. I did do a video hands-on with Artisy Draft. If you want more details, there is a link in that story. Here we got another Unity patch. Won't really go into detail on that one. Zenko Game Engine was updated. Zenko used to be called Paradox 3D. It's a C# powered cross-platform game engine. It's created by Silicon Studios out of Japan, which actually is a spin-off or a direct descendant of SGI or Silicon Graphics if you follow the industry. So they've got a really long heritage in game development, or in graphics development anyways. So a lot of history there. Now, the big things about this particular release is they integrated a code editor directly into the engine, so you can type your C# code in the engine without having to go off to an external IDE or code editor. And it's a full-powered editor, has things like autocomplete, syntax highlighting, etc. The build system is already built in. It's built over the Roslyn compiler, so you get full build support, etc. going on there as well. So it's almost like, working directly, having Visual Studio directly embedded within the game engine. So that's cool. And on top of that, they also added a nav mesh system for basically a 3D navigation and AI work. And they've also done and integrated 3 more starter templates. So there's a first-person starter, third-person starting kit, and a top-down RPG style starter. So basically, like prototypes to get you up and ready. So pretty nice release there. This one probably very little use to most of you. Black Friday 2016 deals. Considering it's Cyber Monday right now, I'm not sure how many of these are still going to be active, but there was a number of savings available out there on game development related resources. I collected most of them. I also did a video of this, so if you follow the channel, you already knew about it, hopefully, so you didn't miss out on anything. But Black Friday and Cyber Monday happened and are currently happening. Figured I'd mention it, but not a lot of use to you, to be honest. Another release this week was Raylib 1.6. I love Raylib. Raylib is this cool little C library, or in kind of a C++ form, so C or C++, written in C though, technically, aimed at beginning game developers. Now, generally, I don't recommend C or C++ for game development for a number of reasons. One of them is included the process of getting up and started, the build process, all that stuff is a pain in the butt. And Raylib gets rid of all of that for you. It does make, it's probably the most accessible C or C++ based game engine out there by far, to be honest. So if you are looking to get into 2D games using C++, check out Raylib. It's definitely the way to go. This guy has a lot of updates. One is there are complete Raylib Lua bindings. Lua is, first off, not supposed to be spelled with capitals, but everyone does that. It's not an acronym. Lua is literally Portuguese for moon. But Lua is a very popular programming language among game developers. It's used by the Default engine, for example, and several other game engines, including CryEngine 6, for example. Or CryEngine 5. Sorry, CryEngine 5. It is a very prolific language in the world of game development, and this is also the language behind Love. So if you go through my beginner tutorial series, you will see Lua there. But they added Lua bindings to the Raylib library, so if you don't want to work with C or C++, there is an alternative here. Redesigned the audio module, physics, their spelling, not mine. It's been moved to its own repository, improved a whole bunch. Camera and gesture modules updated, improved gamepad support on Windows and Raspberry Pi, etc. So just basically an across-the-board improvement. The big things here are definitely the Lua bindings. They also added a pre-configured Visual Studio 2015 solution, so if you don't want to use their integrated editor, that is your option, which is cool for people that are a little bit further along in their C++ knowledge. Oops, didn't want to open that. Another Unity patch, don't really care. And then just announced today, there is a new developer contest. Well, not really even a contest. It's just a giveaway. $15,000 in prizes. DevDog, who is a Unity asset publisher, called up a bunch of other Unity asset publishers, said, you want to put together a Christmas thing? A lot of them said yes. There's something like 40 of them, all came together, including Unity themselves. You go to the website, you fill in your email address, and you click send, and you are now on the list. And then basically every day between December the 1st and December 25th, they're going to be giving out prizes. Now, prizes are things like asset store assets, obviously, because most of the people giving away the prizes here are asset store providers. But there's also Unity Pro license up for grab, tickets to developer conferences, etc. So there's a lot of cool stuff in there. I don't actually know what the prizes actually are, but like I said, there's at least $15,000 worth in there. So if you are interested, head on over. The link is right here. It is at christmas.devdog.io. Now, obviously, you are handing them your email address, so if you do get spammed, don't blame me. It's on someone else. But in this day and age, blocking and managing spam is no big deal, so there's not really the risk of handing out your email address like there used to be. And finally, Tiled 0.17.2 was released. Now, you may recall very early on, Tiled 0.17.1 was released, while 17.2 is mostly a fixed release. And the biggest one is the Qt version, Qt being a cross-platform windowing framework that Tiled ultimately depends on. Was downgraded from 5.7 to 5.62 because 5.7 was causing macOS to crash, which obviously is not a good thing. So if you're using Tiled and you are on macOS, grab this version. It should fix your problems. And there's a couple of other fixes in this particular release as well, but that's probably by far and away, hands down, the big feature of this release. And that's it. I am out of breath. I hope you found that useful. I am so sorry that it's 3 weeks worth of development news instead of 1. The first week there wasn't really enough to justify it. The second week I missed it, and third week here we are. So that's why this one was a little bit bigger, or a lot bigger than normal, but you know, there's actually enough in there that was interesting. So I hope you found out something new in the world of game development. If you did, please do click like, and of course, I do one of these, well, in theory every week, in reality every 2 weeks, and sometimes, unfortunately, every 3 weeks, but I do these all the time. So if you want a recap of the news in the world of events in game development, please do click subscribe. We've also got reviews, tutorials, and all that kind of jazz. Okay, hope you found that useful. See you all later. Goodbye.